A little past 1 o'clock, time to conduct the business of the Wayne County Board of Commissioners. Asked if anyone has cell phones, please put them on vibrate, or pagers also. Mr. Bell, you taking care of the invocation?
Yes. Let us pray. Our Father, we thank Thee for this day. We ask You, dear God, to protect those who are without proper clothing, proper heating. Protect the county commissioners as we attempt to do the county's business today. We ask the Lord to protect all these people that are here. Hope that they drive back home safe and sound without any problems. All these things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Mr. Camardi.
Face the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the January 26, 2015 meeting and the February 3rd?
So moved.
I have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? All in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries. Any adjustments to the agenda, Mr. Wood?
Mr. Chairman, I believe y'all have two items on your desk. One is a replacement for the capital project ordinance on the Ag Center. Pam, do you want to explain the difference now, or do you want to do it when we get to this? Okay. Also, we'd like to walk on one additional budget amendment, and the reason for that is we need to get this check cut to Balfour Bailey, and that's under a NC1 fund agreement with them as an incentive, and we will have Mike Haney here this afternoon to go over that with you. But that's the only things we have. Both of them are already on the agenda. It's just substitutes and one addition.
Okay. Anyone else have any adjustments to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Doherty.
I was hoping that on item 7, the recommendation of the Wayne Health Corporation bylaws changing the two appointments, that be moved to a consent agenda. I see we're not having a pre-briefing this morning.
We could do that if y'all wish to do that.
Does anybody have any objections that we'll
Pleasure
just
to
move
board.
that to consent agenda?
Just move number 7.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Chairman, we will need a closed session on one item.
Okay. Anyone else have any adjustments to the agenda? Okay. Mr. Wood, special recognition for service pins.
We'll have the one-year pins, and when the employees are announced, if they'll come forward, please. Elizabeth Barfield, Social Services. Joshua Davis, Sheriff's Office. Deborah Ellis, Social Services. Pebbles Robinson, Social Services. Shannon Scott, Social Services. Brittany Booker, Emergency Services. Jessica Haywood, Social Services. Mary Morris, Social Services. Brenda Nuncio, 4-H. Annie Risku Smith, Board of Elections. Christine Ruiz, Social Services. Ashley Tillman, Health Department. And we have one more, which the chairman is going to make for 1 year. Just get paid
Mr.
for
George Wood has been with the county.
No, he ain't got time. We already run the league.
Y'all stunned me.
And we'll need a picture.
There you go. Thank you. Okay.
5 years. Matthew Clark, the Sheriff's Office. Marcia Kaufman Woods, Social Services. Kelly Forbes, Emergency Medical Services. Jonathan McKinney, Detention Center.
What a big smile on your face.
Brittany Schroeder, Social Services. Milford Smith, Facility Services. Amy Walston, Sheriff's Office. Years. Sahara Smith, Detention Center. Talisha Burden, Tax Office. David Howell, Facility Services. Years, Rebecca Darden, Social Services.
Congratulations.
You're halfway there.
20 years, Kimberly Kennedy, Social Services. Barbara Cook, Detention Center. Michael Kabler, Sheriff's Office. Michael, do you need a photograph? You can stand in the middle if you want. If you want to make a photograph.
Who's taking?
I don't know.
I thought the guy with the bat was taking it.
I guess I just let someone get a photo.
Okay, I didn't know if he was taking a photograph or not. Okay.
I'll send you one if you want. Here we go.
All right.
30 years, Sharon Howell, Social Services. I don't think she was able to come. Should we give everybody a hand? Congratulations.
Where did everybody go? Everybody leaving. Well, you got to do it. Everybody leave.
What time are we having public comment?
George,
Did we notify Mr.
We'll get a lecture on that.
I'll handle that when we get to it.
We got one, I know. Mr. Chairman, do you want to have public comments now?
Huh?
Do you want to have public comments now?
We can.
Two motions looking like.
We normally have our public comment section at 10 o'clock, but since we had to move the meeting from yesterday to today, we're gonna go ahead and have our public comment section now. If anyone has any comments to make, please come forward, state your name and address and phone number, and you're allowed 4 minutes.
My name is Charles Wright. I live at 203 Winslow Circle, Goldsboro, North Carolina. My phone number is 919-273-2099. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
I come before you this afternoon to share information about the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies Incorporated, known as CALEA. I come before you not to introduce or promote a debate on law enforcement, nor to insinuate whether or not our local law enforcement agency is achieving its mission or meeting public expectations, but as a sincere effort to significantly enhance future public policy as it relates to law enforcement in Wayne County. CALEA provides national accreditation programs in 4 distinct areas: law enforcement accreditation, public safety communication accreditation, public safety training academy accreditation, and campus security accreditation. Accreditation sought by any agency or organization should always be viewed as that agency or organization's willingness to strive towards professional excellence. CALEA embodies that type of accreditation. We've come to expect accreditation and certification in our hospitals and healthcare facilities, our schools and colleges, our transportation systems, and our financial systems, to name a few. Accreditation of law enforcement is a natural progression in our growing, challenging society. CALEA is steadily moving throughout multiple countries, the United States, and across North Carolina. North Carolina currently has approximately 70 accredited law enforcement agencies, ranging in personnel size from 7 to 2,300, affecting nearly 4 million of North Carolina's 9 million citizens, including the nearby communities of Durham, Raleigh, Knightdale, Apex, Cary, Gardner, Clayton, Smithfield, Wilson, New Bern, Jacksonville, Greenville, Wilmington, Fayetteville, and Clinton. I respectfully request you take the following actions. 1, review the information in your folders concerning law enforcement and public safety communication accreditations, which include standard titles, benefits, eligibility, cost, and process. 2, visit the CALEA.org website. And 3, most importantly, invite CALEA representatives. This is a free, non-obligated visit to your next retreat or work session, so they might provide a thorough briefing, answer questions, and explain how their accreditation programs can significantly benefit our law enforcement agencies and our Wayne County community. Thanking you with the greatest respect. I appreciate this opportunity to talk before you. And off note, I'd just like to thank the county commissioners for increasing the public comment time to 4 minutes. Although I won't ask for a pen, I've been addressing bodies for about 20 years. So I appreciate it. It is less challenging to present something in 3 minutes than it is in 4 minutes. But I appreciate the fact that the commissioners did find it in their means to increase the public time limit to 4 minutes. It does significantly make a difference, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright, for your comments and your information, and we've all got a packet with it in it, and we'll certainly look at it, and we do appreciate your comments and your time.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any public comments? No one else has
I
anything?
guess, Mr. Chairman, I'll just make this brief comment. I have to give up on my cutting the public comment time down again because thank you, Mr. Wright.
If no one else has anything, the public comment section is closed. Unfinished business, Mr. Woods?
Mr. Chairman, we don't have any unfinished business.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. We have a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Have a motion on the floor, that we approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, if we could, I would just make sure that we put in that motion that number 7 has been moved up into that, so it's clear.
Yes, in my motion, I include the recommendation on the Wayne Health Corporation bylaw change and the 2 appointments.
Got that, Marcia?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor show sign of right hand for the consent agenda. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to new business. Motion to adopt the capital project ordinance for the construction and acquisition of misdemeanor detention center for fiscal year 2014-15 and 2015-16. Mr. Wood, you would, please?
Yes, sir. You have a memo in your packet on page 54, which deals with this one and the next project ordinance as well. As you know, we've had some discussion previously about how to pay for the jail, and I think the consensus has been that we would go ahead and use more fund balance on that. So what I'm recommending is, if you recall, you committed $5 million last year, but that was still in the general fund. What we're proposing here is that you go ahead and establish the capital projects ordinance, which establishes a capital projects fund for this particular project. We would then transfer the $5 million that's already been committed over, and transfer, what I'm recommending to you is you transfer another $5 million over out of general fund balance. That money would then physically move from the general fund over to this capital projects ordinance, and the $10 million would be there to finish paying for the architect and then move right into the construction of it, which we anticipate will be this spring. So that's what we're recommending on this one.
You've heard Mr. Wood's recommendation. It's a pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion on the floor. We approve budget amendment number 1. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
I just had one question. I see where our fund balance will be decreased to $22,757,000 and some change.
Yeah, I want to stress this, though. That's the unassigned fund balance, that you actually have your reserve target covered plus this.
Okay, I would want to know what percentage that is. I don't have a calculator here. Because the commission board in previous years has said a 14%
Right.
fund balance, and I was wondering where we're at.
Well, the 14% is not included in that number. In other words, you have the 14% set aside plus this.
Okay,
And your policy that we amended last year says that anything over the 14% that you could use for selected capital projects. So that's basically what we're doing here. But you would still have a very healthy amount of money still there for additional capital projects, not including the 14%.
okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? No other, Mr. Bell.
I just want to explain why we did that 14%. If you remember in 2008, everything sort of went south on us. We were doing that because we wanted enough money, if things kept getting bad, that we could operate the county without any real hardship. And I think that happened over the years. We were able to do that.
Right.
Any other discussion?
Mr.
Come on.
Chairman, Mr. Bill is probably a little reluctant to brag on themselves, but watching county government over time, I think we safe to say that some previous boards had a lot to do with putting this kind of fund balance in place, and it would probably just remind us to be, maybe the word judicious, whenever we elect to spend this money, because it was some real hard decisions probably, and some focus on the part of previous boards to put this in place. So I just want to give a little shout out to Mr. Bell. He's too conservative to brag on himself and his fellow board members, but I just wanted to say that for all the board members that served in front of us.
Any other discussion? If not,
Well, actually, there
Mr.
was
Darden.
one comment. Mr. Bell, congratulations on being on the conservative side of this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
any other comments? If not, all in favor of item number 1, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous. Item number 2, motion to adopt capital project ordinance for the construction of an agricultural center for fiscal year 2014-15, 2015-16, 2016-2017. Mr. Wood and Mr. Pate, you can join in it anytime. Mr. Wood, if you would go over it, and then if Bill has any comments.
Okay. Well, as I said in the memo on page 54, the Ag Center is estimated to cost about $14 million, although that number is still preliminary. In a previous year, you had committed $2 million of general fund balance to this project. There's also a little bit of money remaining from a state grant to help finance the design, somewhere around about $160,000. Again, after reviewing the fiscal year 2014 audit, which we underspent, I'm recommending that you increase the committed fund balance from $2 million to $4 million for this project. So what we would do here is, again, you would be establishing a capital projects ordinance, which is where you're actually appropriating the money. We set up a new capital projects fund for the Ag Center project. And then we would physically move the money. The $2 million that's already committed from the general fund, we'll move that over. And then if you approve it, the additional $2 million from the general fund in this year, and that would put a little bit over $4 million in this fund towards the $14 million.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Pate.
I will make the motion that we do this, and then I have a comment, so the motion is made.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor for item number 2 under new business. Mr. Pate.
Thank you. As we all recall, it was about 3 weeks ago, we met with our legislative group from out of Raleigh, and Steve did a good job covering that, by the way. And it was suggested at that time that if we expect the General Assembly to give us any additional dollars, we need to show that we're willing to step up to the plate and add some more money to this. And we're committed to this project, and that's why we're taking this step. As I told the Carl Best group the other day, where there's a will, there's a way. So we're going to make it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman, the only other thing I'd mention is, Pam, would you go over the difference? Because I want to make sure what we're recommending is that you do this amended sheet that she's given you rather than the one that was in the packet. Pam, you want to go over the difference?
I'll be glad to. In the original project ordinance that we gave you, we were using more fund balance, but we had already appropriated fund balance of $2 million in the Fund 182. And so what we had to do was actually change it so that we did a transfer instead of a fund balance appropriation. It's the same money.
That was clear as mud. Explain that again.
We had already appropriated fund balance for $2 million. So we could not appropriate that again. So all I did is take the appropriation, which was, it just had it for Ag Center. So I decreased that line item and made it a transfer to a capital project fund.
So essentially, you're going to end up with $4 million over in the capital
As long as we
project.
got the
It's
4 in.
accounting.
I was going to say we need to send him to accounting school.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Kamari.
And as previously stated, Mr. Herring so professionally covered the meeting that we had with our legislators, and the legislators were a little bit pessimistic as to whether or not we were going to get any state funds And so I do probably see it as a bold move on the part of county government that we would add another $2 million to the $2 million that was already put in place. I bring this up because I would not want anyone between here and Raleigh and those who have their offices in Raleigh to miss the point that Wayne County is, as my good friend here said, stepping up. And it's not that we assign this money lightly by any means. So we are looking for the state, certainly the state, and hope for the federal government to do something when they approach, because I know we have representatives in Raleigh. So we would be looking for them to do something for eastern North Carolina, because as most things happen, it wouldn't be just a Wayne County opportunity, it would be a regional opportunity. And so we look for everyone that has an opportunity to step up to the plate. And Wayne County putting their $4 million in it is by no means a small step.
Anyone else have any comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
This may be a question for Pam or the county manager. The initial $2 million that the county put in to this project, it didn't come out of fund balance, is that correct?
These are sub-accounts. It was a Fund 182, and it did not come out of our 110 general fund balance, but they are all combined in our audit. So yes, it did come out of fund balance.
Okay, but the original account that the first $2 million came out of, was there a balance left in that account?
There was a balance left, but with the amount that the auditors gave us unassigned, unrestricted, the first $2 million was taken out before they gave us that number. So the only amount that you're actually going above that is the $2 million.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Daugherty.
I'm sorry, I'm just late today. Why you got this established over 3 fiscal years?
Because we're thinking it may take that long to get everything done. But
But it
that
could take
doesn't-
place sooner.
it can take place sooner. And you can add to those years also. The nice thing about a capital projects ordinance is you can amend it at any time. And some people look at using capital reserve funds. The reason I didn't want to do that is once you put money in a capital reserve fund, it has to be used for that specific purpose. And this way, this gives you the maximum flexibility, but it has in fact appropriated the money.
Well, I only point that out, in the interest of fellow Commissioner Pate, who seems to be losing sleep over this, and I'd hate to see him lose sleep for 3 more years.
Yeah, my hair is falling out.
Well, one last comment.
Yeah, Mr. Martin.
Just if I totally understood Mr. Wood's comments, my friend here could lose a little less sleep because if no money shows up from any place else, heaven forbid it doesn't, that money can be put back into its original. And that's what I think is important about all this. And thank you, Mr. Wood, because you had pointed this out before, but I don't know that I heard you say it this morning.
Okay.
So I just want the public to understand that we're doing something, but we have a safeguard in place.
That's correct.
All right, thank you, sir.
Anyone else? No one else? All in favor of motion, Mr. Pate's motion for item number 2, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous. Item number 3, motion to adopt a resolution establishing a funding policy for nonprofit organizations. Mr. Wood, the floor is all yours.
Okay. Well, as y'all recall, at the recent budget retreat, you'd asked that I prepare a proposed policy for your consideration dealing with the funding request of nonprofit organizations. And I just want to say the reason that we move forward with this is because about this time every year, we send out letters to the nonprofits that we currently fund, reminding them that they need to put in a request again this year, and also putting in that letter the information that we want to receive from them on it. And so I asked Ms. Holt to hold up on that letter until you'd had an opportunity to review this and hopefully approve the policy, because then when we send the letter out, we're going to include the policy, however you end up with it, hopefully today. We'll include that in the letter so that people will know when they go to do a request that this is what we're looking for, that we want these questions the information to answer these questions. And of course, then if someone who you're not currently funding asked for a county contribution, they would go through the same process, and we would send them a letter with the same criteria so that we're getting all of this information from everybody. So I wanted to stress that's what's pushing the time frame on this. But as I say in the memo, there are hundreds of nonprofit organizations within Wayne County, all of them doing great work to improve the quality of life here. They're supported primarily by voluntary charitable contributions made by individual citizens and businesses. Some receive grants from private foundations. Some of these nonprofit organizations have received county financial support in the form of either money or reduced free rent, and some still do. Still others would like for the Board of Commissioners to subsidize their operations with tax funds. It should be clearly stated that any contribution from county government to a nonprofit organization is not a voluntary contribution by our citizens. It's a decision by the Board of Commissioners to provide financial support, whether individual citizens agree with that or not. And if someone does not pay their taxes, the county is authorized to seize bank accounts and/or sell property to satisfy those taxes. There's nothing voluntary about that. So the first issue that arises is a philosophical one. Under what conditions would the Board of Commissioners deem it proper to require that our citizens financially support a particular nonprofit organization? To answer that question suggests that there should be some criteria used to evaluate each case. Attached here, enclosed, is a resolution setting out a proposed policy that includes criteria for making this assessment, as well as a list of questions that each nonprofit organization seeking funding should be required to answer. As economic times become more difficult, the funding for nonprofit organizations will continue to be under stress. It's a normal human tendency to want to preserve the good services they provide. But the county's resources are limited, and we struggle to provide our statutorily required services to the public. Realistically, you cannot become a backstop for the United Way, which has to limit its own ability to provide resources each campaign year as well. There will always be more requests for assistance within the community than there are financial resources to meet them. Once you review and, if necessary, amend this policy, as I said previously, we'll send a copy to each nonprofit that's currently funded by the county and also to any who ask to be included. So as far as the resolution, I'm not going to read all of that, but basically what it does is it resolves that you're incorporating the policy that's on attachment 1 as your official policy on it. So what I'd like to do now is just spend time talking about attachment number 1. Attachment number 1 on page 61 is the proposed Wayne County, North Carolina funding policy for nonprofit organizations. And in it, we're saying, in evaluating requests from nonprofit organizations for financial support from Wayne County government, the Board of Commissioners and staff will utilize the following process and criteria. Number 1 is all nonprofit requests shall be considered only as a part of the county's annual budget process. This will assure that the necessity for these requests will be compared to every other request for county funding. So in other words, this does not allow people to come in mid-year, 2 months after you approve your budget, and say, we'd like you to fund this nonprofit. It needs to be compared with everything else. Because even when the budget is approved, as y'all know, take last year, for example, we cut an additional $1.5 million out of our budget. And I think we all agreed a lot of those things were things we needed, but we deferred them. And so I don't want to be in a position where we're actually cutting back in our budget things we need, and then people come along mid-year and say, we'd like you to help fund a nonprofit, which you're not legally obligated to do. Number 2, the nonprofit organization's mission should be a service that has a direct connection with services provided by Wayne County. For example, we help fund the Friends of Seymour Johnson Air Force Base due to its major impact on our community from an economic development standpoint. the county is in the business of economic development. In fact, we fund the Wayne County Development Alliance, Inc. for that very purpose. So it's tied in with one of our core missions. And economic development is one of those areas that counties by law are authorized to be engaged in. So that's what I meant by being tied in with a service with a direct connection to our services. Number 3, what is unique about the services provided that a particular nonprofit organization should be financially supported while denying such support to the hundreds of other nonprofit organizations in Wayne County? Said another way is, what differentiates it that it should get funding when we're turning others down? Number 4, is the service provided by this nonprofit organization one that county government is authorized under state law to provide, but has chosen not to provide directly? So there may be services where the county could do it, but we're choosing to do it through a nonprofit. 5, is the service provided by this nonprofit organization critical enough to the community that the Board of Commissioners is willing to raise taxes for its support or keep them higher to continue its support? Because ultimately, if you're funding nonprofit organizations which you don't have to legally provide, in essence, the tax rate is higher to do that. And so it needs to be important enough that you agree as a body that we're willing to do that and raise the taxes for that. Number 6, is this service critical enough that it should be financed by county government, even if that means cutting back existing county services? Again, that may mean that we cut back in one area of county government in order to fund this. 7, is the service provided by this nonprofit organization one that is legally supposed to be provided by another entity or financially supported by that entity? There may be cases where someone else is supposed to be doing that, and we should look at that before we make a decision on it. Number 8, is the service provided by this nonprofit organization a duplication of a similar service provided by another nonprofit organization or other entity? So we just need to make sure that we're not in fact duplicating what's already out there. 9, how long has this nonprofit organization been in continuous business, and is it legally recognized as a qualified tax-exempt organization under the Internal Revenue Code? The reason for this is that you may get requests from brand new organizations, and I think most of you know the United Way won't contribute to an organization until it has some history. They're not in the business of funding brand new organizations, and I think we should take a similar approach to it and say we need to know there's a track record and who's being served and that sort of thing. Also, it takes about, I believe, about 6 months, doesn't it, Gordon, to get tax exempt status?
Sure, sometimes long.
Number 10, if it has received over $5,000 of public funding within a fiscal year, is it in full compliance with NCGS 55A 16-64? And has it provided these financial statements to the county and either its most recent IRS Form 990 or 990EZ? And I provided you with a copy of that statute in the back. It basically says, at the request of any citizen, anybody receiving more than $5,000 has to provide this financial information to anybody who requests it. And obviously, if anybody's going to get it, we should be getting it on the front end to review their request.
Could I question that now?
Yeah,
If it has received over $5,000 of public funding,
of public funds.
so if over $5,000 comes from the county as an example,
Right.
then they would be obligated to provide financials
If you
to
request.
anyone that
If you
requests it.
request it.
Or anyone,
But actually, it's, the law says to anybody
to anybody.
that requests it.
Okay, thank you.
And their 990 or 990, as you know, they don't pay income tax, but they still have to file, make a filing with the IRS. That's their annual filing with the IRS is the 990 form. So what we're saying is we would also want that to make sure they're in good standing with the IRS. Does this nonprofit organization have an independent audit, a compilation of its financial records, or a review of its records? And each one of those is a little lower standard. Audit is the highest, then you can have a compilation, and then you can have just a review of it. Of its records performed by a certified public accounting firm on an annual basis. If not, how often are its financial records reviewed and in what manner? And then a side note to that, under NCGS 15940, a county may require an audit for any fiscal year in which it provided 1,000 or more, except for certain organizations specifically exempted under this statute. And I've provided you with that statute as well so that you can see what the exceptions are to that. Now, where you need to be reasonable in that request, because audits cost quite a bit of money. And so if somebody's getting a very small amount of money from us, I don't think it's reasonable to get a full audit every year, because if you do, it's going to cost them more than what you gave them. Has the nonprofit organization provided sufficient detail in its request to determine all the sources of revenue available to it, including those from any city or town and the United Way? Has it listed any in-kind contributions? Has it received any property tax exemptions? And so all of that should be obvious. What we're looking for is enough specificity in its income statement so that we understand where their financial, the bulk of their financial support is coming from. Has the that's number 12. Has the nonprofit organization had any issues of financial irregularities within the last 10 years that have or would impact its reputation for integrity and therefore support within the community? I think this one kind of goes without saying. Obviously, if an organization has had problems, questions about whether its financial operations are solid or not, or the money's been handled appropriately, I think obviously you want to take that into account before you would appropriate any taxpayers' money. That doesn't mean you would rule it out. If the problems have been corrected and it's proven they're corrected, then you could look at it. But clearly, if there are those kind of issues out there and there's not been a clear resolution yet, we need to take that into account. 14, what specific service and its cost are to be provided if the request is granted? In other words, we want a clear understanding of what it is you want and what's the cost of it. And then we want to know, is this an existing expense to the organization, or is it a new initiative that needs funding? If an existing expense, explain how the organization has financed this need in past years. In other words, if you've been doing it before, why do you need county funding now? Is this expense a one-time cost or a request for ongoing operating expenses? Number 15, how will the services provided be accounted for, and what metrics will be used to determine success of the program or service? How many participants have been helped and are anticipated to be helped by the services provided? In other words, we want a clear understanding of what's your estimate of how many people are going to be served. How do you intend to measure that? Do you have a means of measuring it? And how will we know if the services have been adequately provided? And then number 16, is the nonprofit organization willing to enter into a written agreement with Wayne County specifying the services to be provided and the measurement and evaluation criteria to determine success? Where this came from is we had a copy, I believe it was of Brunswick County, or Onslow, I can't remember, I think it was Brunswick County, where they've done something similar to this. For any agency that they provide, nonprofit agency they provide services to, they have a written contract on that. And it spells out clearly what the expectations are. And then the last sentence is simply that the county manager would be responsible for the collection of this information, which we are now on all nonprofits, from each applicant for funding and for a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners as part of the annual budget process and his recommended annual budget. So I just view this as another part of the budget. If you're saying you're only going to do it during the annual budget year process, then people would make their requests, just like the department heads make requests to you also, and then we would consider it as part of the annual budget process. So that's basically the policy that I'm recommending to you, and I've tried to give you some explanation for why some of the questions are in there. But I'll be happy to try to answer any other questions you may have.
Any other questions from Mr. Wood?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor?
I think you may have covered it, George, but you and your staff would implement this criteria?
Yes, if you adopt it as the official policy by adopting this resolution, what we're going to do is send out the letter we typically send out with some modifications, reference this, and then we will include a copy of the resolution and the policy for them, and the letter will reference that and say, with your submission, you need to give us sufficient information to answer these questions.
So the same people that usually work on the budget with you, this will become part of that criteria?
That's correct.
Okay.
And basically, our budget review team is myself, the assistant manager, the finance director, and 2 or 3 members of her staff.
And some of the items that's in here are being done now.
That's correct.
Some of them are already being done. It's not down in a hard copy anywhere.
That's right.
We just need the procedure. And Mr. Wood has talked to several of the nonprofits one-on-one. We've talked to 2 of us with them, and I've talked to some one-on-one. So I really hadn't had a whole lot of kickback once it was explained to them. I mean, I hadn't. I don't know whether.
I haven't either. I think they understand that you're trying to do your due diligence on each request to determine these kinds of questions. Because if this were a county program, these are a lot of the kinds of questions we'd be asking. If we were starting an entirely new county program, these are the kind of things I'd be asking the department head.
Yeah, we've made it very clear to them that we understand that these nonprofits are vital to the county. But we've got to be as fruitful as we can with the taxpayers' dollars. And all we want to do, like I told one this morning, I'm certainly not going to sit and say that you're not going to get funded or you're going to get less funding or more funding. It's all we want is documentation on what services you're providing to the county. And a lot of them are probably providing a service cheaper than what the county can provide. But we just want that clarified.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Doherty.
I make a motion that we adopt a resolution establishing the funding policy for nonprofit organizations in Wayne County.
I have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kamari.
in your previous comments just a few minutes ago, well, let me back up. Mr. Wood said it would be he, the assistant manager, and 2 or 3 of his staff. But if I understood you correctly, that you said that you had talked with several of them, and that inferred that you had met with some of them, or had had discussion with some of them, as the chairman of the, as the chairman.
We have had calls where people have asked to meet with us.
And you did?
And we did.
And who did that consist of?
We've met with Watch and with Wish.
And I bring that out in this manner. 2 years ago, or my first year on the board, there was an extensive, may have been just a little bit of overkill as far as the county commissioners meeting with folk who, I mean the departments, about what their requests were.
Right.
This past year, it was done more through you. And then in some instances that, well, at least I'll speak for myself, it makes me less knowledgeable of specifically what folk are interested in and what they say they want. With the nonprofits, I don't remember 2 years ago any of them coming before us except literacy and maybe art. If art is a nonprofit, they may categorize themselves.
Yeah, the arts county.
But what I'm getting at is most of the lists that I have seen, I am not that personally familiar with their mission. So for me to vote on it, I think I would be a little bit in the dark about what they specifically wanted. And if some of us are in conversation with nonprofits, I wonder where does that leave the rest of us in terms of what we're gonna be expected to vote on?
Well, the people that I've met with, they have requested to meet with me, okay? And in some cases with the chairman. Now, I left one out. I also met with the Arts Council, but I believe I was the only one who met with them.
I wasn't involved in that.
But where that leaves the rest of them is if they didn't make a request to meet with you,
Well,
then, I'm just wondering if they are aware that they should make a request, or they need to, or are
well,
they gonna
actually,
be
it's early.
enhanced by
Actually, it's early.
this early?
I think they've done that because of the press that this issue has garnered. Typically, what they do is they turn in their budgetary requests, and as I said, we'll be sending out a letter reminding them that they need to get it in and reminding them of the information we need. At that point, once we get that back in, we'll have a pretty good understanding of what they do, and then we may call them in and ask for follow-up questions. Now, once I have all of that information, what y'all want to do with it, once I give you a recommendation, could go anywhere from you simply take that recommendation, or you can schedule one of your work sessions on the budget, and we'll go through and provide you everything we've been provided, agency by agency, and let you see everything that we've been provided. If that, I mean, if that's what you want to do, you're certainly within your rights to do that. But if we're gonna do it, I would suggest you do them all, and you do them all in a work session and go over the whole shooting match at one time.
Well, and that's sort of where I was going with this, because I would not want to come up down the road someplace and someone say, well, I didn't get a chance to make my case, or
Yeah.
I had some information that wasn't provided, or, and you know, we
Right.
could have, I look most particular at number 8, is the service provided by this nonprofit organization a duplication of similar service
Right.
provided by another nonprofit organization in the other entity. And sometimes, you know, it's gonna take some plowing through the weeds this year with this group coming in, because I think maybe we were probably a little bit more familiar with the departments coming in making requests than the nonprofits. I just wanna make sure we're
Right.
not missing anything. in
Well,
terms of
I
this.
will say this, that most of the agencies that you're funding now, you've been funding for some time. And so the staff has seen those requests year in and year out, and they provide a pretty good amount of information already. So we're not unfamiliar with what they do. But I think some of these folks just want, because of the press coverage that we've had, just wanted to understand our process a little bit better. And I think because I've only been here a year, they wanted to make sure that I understood what they did.
And that was really sort of kicking right there in the corner of my mind. I would imagine that Mr. Smith may have met over the last 12, 14 years a lot with these organizations, and with them coming on, one here, one here, one here, I think it would be just a good sense that we have them all on a level playing field.
Yeah.
And we have a chance to get familiar with everything they say they're doing and what their requests are.
Right. Well, as I say, that's entirely up to the board, so I would suggest y'all give that some thought, because those, you know, I'll be giving you the budget sometime around May 20th, somewhere in that area. I think we gave it to you May 27th last year. The law requires that I give it to you by June 1. So sometime between, say, May 27 and then when you vote on it, you know, you have about a 2-3 week period there to review it. Y'all could do a work session on that if that's what you choose to do. And you could do a follow-up. After I give you that information, you may say, well, we'd like to have this particular organization come in. And then we could schedule that at a second meeting.
And Mr. Camarda does bring up a good point, because I don't know how many Mr. Wood has talked to one-on-one. I went out to the watch thing,
Right,
just
I
like you
did too,
did. That's
yeah.
was my one-on-one
Yeah.
there. And then the only one that me and Mr. Wood has met with together is Wish. So there's a lot of these other nonprofits. I'm just like you. I mean, I don't know what. I mean, I kind of know what their function is, but then again, I don't.
That's my point.
Well,
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, when the manager gives you the budget, if it's a public document, everybody will know what he's recommending, and you can't vote on it until you have a public hearing. And any of the people who are not satisfied with what he has recommended can come before you and say whatever they want to.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Doherty.
You know, and I don't want to belabor this, and I don't want to make this too controversial in that it already is. But my concern is that there's been a long history in counties of taxing its citizens, bringing those taxes in, and then deciding where these dollars are going to nonprofits that are not the core mission of government. At some point, where do you draw the line? All of these entities are extremely valuable to our community. And it's easy to turn around and criticize the messenger, but the bottom line is outlined in this, which states that basically is that so important that we as an entity tax its citizens, raise taxes, or keep taxes artificially high in order to take those dollars and give them to a nonprofit. And that is what this policy is outlining, that those nonprofits come, make their presentations, make their requests, and there is a specific criteria that they must meet. And I think it's good. Other counties are having to address this as well because it's somewhat has gotten out of hand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments, Mr. Mayor?
And to go along what Commissioner Daugherty said, if I remember correctly, about $750,000 is equal to about 1% of our budget. Is that the?
1 cent on tax.
1 cent, 1 cent, I
1
mean.
cent on the tax.
About 750,000. So, we need some kind of guidelines, because I remember in 2013, when we had all the nonprofits to come up, we had 2 or 3 commissioners were able to come and listen to their presentation. We all know that all these nonprofits, as far as we're concerned, are vital, unless we know otherwise. But what we were concerned about back in 2013 was that we found out that some of the nonprofits had a tremendous fund balance, but yet they were coming to the county asking for funding. And we need to have some guidelines to go by to make sure that what we're doing with taxpayer money is exactly, and just like we would do if we were looking at anything for the county, like the jails, like the advanced manufacturing. So all of these things, we have been futile, really watching the taxpayer pennies and dollars. We need to do this across the board, because we've already been told over the last 3 or 4 weeks, we're going to get less funding from the state. We're going to get less funding from the federal government. We know it's coming. So we need to do whatever we can, not to decrease services to our citizens, to provide those services at a high quality, as reasonably priced as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? If not, I have a motion on the floor. All in favor of Mr. Daugherty's motion, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Item number 4, North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Legislative Goals video. Ms. Marcia, have you got that?
We'd like to welcome you to the NCACC update for February 2015. In today's program, we'll give you an overview of the Legislative Goals Conference that was held in January, and we'll introduce our government relations team. You can get more information on any of the topics we present on our website or through our social media outlets. County officials from across North Carolina gathered in Moore County in mid-January. It was the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners Biannual Legislative Goals Conference. This conference is held every 2 years just prior to the start of the General Assembly's new biennium. It is the culmination of a months-long process that began in summer to determine the county's legislative agenda. This year, 70 counties submitted more than 300 proposals for consideration. The list was narrowed as the goals were reviewed by the NCACC steering committees, the Legislative Goals Committee, and finally by the Board of Directors. The conference began with an information session on Thursday morning. This session was designed to help commissioners have a better understanding of the current legislative environment. Joe Stewart, the executive director for the North Carolina Free Enterprise Foundation, reviewed the results of the 2014 state elections and what their impacts would be on the legislature. Our own Rebecca Troutman, the NCACC's Intergovernmental Relations Director, reviewed the status of the current year's state budget and how that will impact decisions made at the legislature this year.
We just got our January collections in, that distribution from the state. And remember, that really reflects sales that happened 3 months ago. So we're not really seeing all the kick-in from the holiday sales yet. We had a tremendous increase year from last January, but I caution my county finance officers that we still have a lot of outstanding nonprofit revenue refunds that have not hit, so don't go spending it all. But we are starting to see real growth in our sales taxes, and I think we can see that not only in front of an improving economy, but also with regards to the expansion of the sales tax base in 2013 and Amazon collecting remote sales on our behalf. They started doing that last February. So I think all of those things coming together is really demonstrating some true growth in our sales tax base, but I do caution you not to rely on that huge boost in the January distribution as being a trend moving forward at the end of this fiscal year.
Voting began in earnest on Thursday afternoon. 89 counties sent voting delegates to the conference to debate 44 proposals in areas such as health and human services, tax and finance, justice and public safety, and public education. In addition, 6 new proposals were brought forward at the conference for consideration. In the end, voting delegates approved 45 goals for 2015 and 16. After approving the goals, voting delegates were asked to rank their top 5 priorities. Continued state funding of Medicaid and the restoration of the original 40% share of lottery proceeds designated for school construction were voted as the top 2 priorities for counties in 2015 and 16. Other priorities are to eliminate the general statute that allows school boards to sue boards of county commissioners over county appropriations for education, to ensure the state does not shift to counties any funding responsibility for transportation such as secondary road construction and maintenance, and to avoid unfunded mandates or shifts of state responsibilities to counties. NCACC President Ronnie Beal of Macon County presided over the meeting.
Again, remember the guiding principles are above the goals. They have been thoroughly vetted by the steering committee, the legislative goals committee, and the board of directors. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any of those opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Good work.
The association's team of registered lobbyists advocates the county's interests before dozens of administrative, legislative, and rulemaking committees, both during and in between legislative sessions. Now here is an introduction to the NCACC Government Relations staff. Thank you for joining us for this NCACC update. For more information on any of the items discussed in this program, visit ncacc.org or any of our social media sites.
None of the state priorities that's been voted on and moving forward. We talked about what the priorities were going to be, legislative goals going to Congress last week, and there are 11 of those. And they'll be discussed in the Washington, D.C. meeting in the caucus. But we spent a great deal of time discussing all that. And I've got all that information here if everybody wants a copy of that, along with the financials and all that we covered. But in view of time, I won't cover all that because we spent an entire day going over it, so I won't do that. But anyway, just want to let you know that those folks are working hard for us up there, and a lot of commissioners across the state obviously were there. I think it was 33 of us there. And I stood up and spoke in favor of, let everybody know what was going on with Seymour Johnson and the challenges we face with the wind turbines and possible frac. That discussion got started because Cumberland County with Fort Bragg is looking for downsizing of their troops. Of course, I looked around the room to make sure who was in there before I talked about it, but I did anyway. But good meeting, and I just wanted to let y'all know that the federal goals are getting ready to go up too, and I've got copies of that with me. If you want a copy of it, I'll give it to Marcia, she can give it to you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Darby?
I do want to let everyone know that I attended the General Government Committee of the North Carolina County Commissioners Association. And there were two items that were brought up in the committee meeting. One was an election update. And I think a lot of people are not aware of the fact that North Carolina will be holding a presidential primary, which will be separated from the general primary. So we in the counties are going to be faced with this additional cost of the election. So from my understanding, sometime in March we'll have a presidential primary. Then we'll have a primary in May, as we generally do, for all of the other elected officials. And then there would be a runoff, if there's a runoff, in June. And then we'll have the election in November. So we're going to be faced with additional cost in regards to election. Additionally, and they had a long presentation in regards to internet service. I think a lot of people, and I think Commissioner Pate was concerned in regards to internet service down at Seven Springs there.
Yes, still are.
And you probably were faced with the fact that the law prevents counties from being involved with infrastructure like internet and so forth. Wilson County actually has done that. And for some reason, they've gotten an exemption, but the presentation in a nutshell was you may not provide it as a county, but you can reach out having infrastructure in place and partner with an organization or a company to provide it. But so that there are some leeway there in regards to how to provide that. So at any rate, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? If not, Ms. Holt, budget amendments.
Good afternoon. We'll start with budget amendment number 282 for the Health Department. Number 282 and number 286 are for health, so we'll do those both at the same time if that's okay with you. Budget amendment number 282 for $21,250 to appropriate funds for the implementation of electronic health records received from the Division of Medical Assistance. We've already received these funds. Budget amendment number 286 totaled $6,534 to appropriate additional funds awarded by the North Carolina Division of Public Health for WIC.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion on the floor. We approve budget amendment 282 and 286. Any comments?
Question.
Mr.
Mr. Wood, these electronic health records, I maybe should ask from Joe or Ray, is this sort of like what we're attempting to do over at DSS, try to put everything electronic and get rid of some of the paper? Is that what we're doing there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good move.
Anyone else? Have a motion on the floor. All in favor show sign of right hand. Motion carries.
The next five budget amendments for the sheriff, and they're similar in character. Number 284, $10,485.56 to anticipate and appropriate funds received for seized property. Number 287, $9,772.07 to appropriate seized property funds received by the sheriff. Budget amendment number 297, $6,775 to appropriate concealed weapon and fingerprint fees received. Budget Amendment Number 298, $1,176 to appropriate an insurance refund received for an accident. And number 299, $14,420 to allocate fingerprint funds for purchase of new fingerprint scan station.
Pleasure of the board.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion on the floor from Mr. Gurley for the budget amendment 299, 298, 297, 287,
284.
and 284. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
The next three, number 291, 292, and 314, are for the 4-H department. Number 291 is a decrease of $10,472.46 to decrease revenue and expenditure for the grant that expired 01/31/2015, and this is for 4-H youth and families. Number 292 is for $500 to appropriate a donation received for Wildlife Habitat Evaluation Program. Number 314 is $5,000 to appropriate funds received for the 4-H Robotics Program.
Pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Payne.
move that we adopt 291, 292, and 314.
Have a motion on the floor. Discussion. No discussion, all in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
Okay, we have budget amendment number 301, and then as a walk-on 319, and they're both for WCDA. I want to ask Mike Haney just to step forward in case y'all do have questions about this. 301 is to anticipate and appropriate funds for the Rural Center for Balfour Beatty Rail. And then budget amendment 319 is to anticipate and appropriate funds for Balfour Beatty. This is where we have a match. The county is $15,000, the city is $15,000, and then One North Carolina contributes $15,000. In total, that budget amendment is $30,000, because what we're doing is we're appropriating the county's $15,000 match and then anticipate the funds flow through the county. So we're anticipating the money from One North Carolina, and then we'll try, write a check, just give those funds to Balfour Beatty. Mike, would you like to make any comments on these?
Yes, thanks, Pam. The Balfour Beatty Rail received a One North Carolina grant based on a performance initiative that they would receive a total of $60,000 from the One North Carolina Fund. And the city and the county agreed to match, have the local match. Per the terms of the fund, it does require 100% match by local government. And Balfour Beatty has requested a 50% disbursement at this point. And the city, I got word today, has already approved theirs, and their check is going to be ready at the end of the week. And we're looking at $15,000 from the county, and then the Department of Commerce is going to be submitting $30,000 to us as a pass-through. And that's the way that's going to work. But Balfour Beatty has already created 23 of their total 29 jobs. And the average wage for these jobs are $46,608. And they have already invested an additional $706,962 in their facility and equipment. And they were going to be creating or investing a total of $1,050,000. So they're well on their way to doing that. And we ran this by the Department of Commerce, and the burden of proof for the grant is twofold. One is a fixed asset report, and that's where the $706,000 came from. And the other burden of proof is the NCUI 101 for the jobs that they have created. And they are on track as far as doing that. Commerce approved the disbursement.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
Is this already been in place for years? Is this?
Yes, actually, let's see, this is 15. It came about in December of 2012.
I thought it did. So they are meeting their yearly requirements in order to draw their 1NC funds and the county funds.
Right, this is their first request.
First request?
First request for those funds.
Okay.
And I met with them week before last, and they are on track for creating the number of jobs by the end of this year. Their closeout date, I think, is December the 5th, 2015. And they will have to have created the jobs and made the investment at that particular point. And the question always comes up, what happens in the event that they don't create them all? And there's a formula in place, both with the county, the city, and the state as far as figuring how much they have earned of that particular grant. And if by chance something would happen, and I don't foresee this happening, but they don't keep those jobs in place, they have to keep those jobs for an additional year. So it's going to be through December 2016. And if they don't, then the clawback provision comes into place to where we will ask them for money back.
Mr. Kamara.
And you say the average salary was for these jobs $46,000?
Yes, sir. 46,608.
And how many are projected to be in place by the end of this year?
Well, so far they've created 23 of the total that they promised of 29.
Do you keep any statistics, or does it matter that how many of those jobs have gone to Wayne County employees who are already here? Are we typically talking about people that are brought in as part of the company from someplace else?
Oh, as far as our residents, our existing residents?
Yeah.
About 80% come from Wayne County. We have a good base as far, and in this particular case, folks that are involved in electronics, and they had been able to find their talent pool lately right here in Wayne County. Now, of course, you know, some of the engineers they may need to bring in have specific talents or skills.
So can we assume that when companies come in to Wayne County that the average company might be hiring as much as 80% of the population that's in Wayne County, since it's...
For the most part, Commissioner Pate, does that sound about right?
Yeah, they'll contact us to find out what the pool of applicants are before they even consider coming here. And if you don't have the base, then they're not coming. And we've had this discussion many times, haven't we, Mike, over the years? And that's how Works began, is because we were trying to build up our workforce. Because that's the first and primary thing that a company looks at. Not the only thing, but it's the primary thing they look at is your labor pool. You have a qualified labor pool and an available labor pool.
That's right. And I may add that because of your action in the last 60 days, where we have gaps in our talent pool with the Advanced Manufacturing Center, we're going to bridge those gaps with the help of community college.
Mr. Doty.
Pam, I think this question's for you. From what well, maybe for both of you. From what I'm understanding, this was agreed to back in 2012. They now have come to the point that they want to draw 50% of those grants. My question is, the $15,000 from the standpoint of the county, was that set aside in 2012 in a separate fund?
No, sir, we don't budget for it till they meet the criteria.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Might that not be an issue? If we are agreeing to an obligation of the county, it looks like we would set aside and budget for that.
Well, if you had, though, it would, remember your budgetary appropriations lapse at year end. So if you had, you would have ended up having to reappropriate
Sure.
anyway.
Sure.
So typically what they do is they just wait until they meet the standards. North Carolina Department of Commerce signs off on it, and that's based on information Mike provides to them. So once they get that, then we do a budget amendment. If it was a significant amount of money, then you might want to put a restriction on it or commit it in the general fund balance. But for this amount of money, it was small enough, we just do a budget amendment.
I understand, 15, it would be a small amount, but do we have some contingent liability out here on other grants that we are on our share contribution and such?
Well, I don't think they really become contingent till they meet this, the criteria of it.
Mike, are you aware of any?
Well, and I think that's a really good question, and in the past, probably 5 years, we have got probably 5 1NCs, of which I can think 2 that have met the criteria to start drawing. The other 3 did not, and so we never pulled the trigger on it.
Well, let me suggest this, because that is a good question, is would you provide us with those that we have not pulled the trigger on yet, and what the potential liability is when and if they meet the criteria?
I can. I don't think that we have any outstanding right now, but I will look into it.
Okay.
Well, we don't have any outstanding.
Well, I think that would put all of our minds at ease on this.
Okay, thank you.
I want to make sure that, I think what Mike was telling us is that we're going to receive from one North Carolina fund 30,000 instead of 15, because we're going to receive the batch for the cities. Is that correct?
That's right.
And so, before y'all adopt this, I'd like to change that from 30,000 to 45,000, because they're going to send the city's portion to, what he was saying is they're going to send the city's portion to us, which we're going to have to send out also.
Do a pass through.
Right.
So you want to amend that to 45,000?
45,000 on the expenditure code of there, and change the one North Carolina to 30,000. I didn't realize the city was going to roll through here too.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor.
Like, some of these contracts, I call it, go up to 4 years, don't they? As far as creating the jobs, depending on what size the company is and how many jobs or how much money they're gonna put into a
They
particular
can.
project.
Typically, the ones that we've seen are 3 years, that they have 3 years to create, and they must maintain for one additional for a total.
That's very important information for the public to know, because most people in Wayne County don't know what we do to shore up potential losses that could take place. So, I just, can you remember, you've been with the WCDA, 10 years?
Yes, sir.
Can you remember any instance of where any incentives that the county's been involved with that we have lost money?
No, I do not. I don't recall a clawback situation at all. And I think that's because the proper safeguards have been put into place by both the county and, in this instance, the city as well as the state. And that when you check the NCUI 101s, they're not going to be paying taxes on employees that don't exist. And so that's our safeguard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of Budget Amendment 301 and 319.
Have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion? Not all in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries.
Okay, budget amendment number 303 is for the Department of Social Services, $2,253.07 to appropriate additional funds from Duke Energy Progress and Piedmont Natural Gas.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve.
Have a motion on the floor. We approve Budget Amendment 303. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor, show sign of right hand.
Budget amendment number 312 is for the fire district to transfer Pinewood's budget to Saliston, Belfast, Elroy, and Paytown. And this is where the funds are being split on a pro rata basis to these other fire departments. And the budget was originally in Pinewood, and so to not exceed these other fire departments' appropriations, we have to increase those. It's for a total of $107,374.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Camardi.
Move to approve.
Have a motion on the floor. We approve budget amendment 312. Any discussion?
Just a quick question. Are we getting any closer to an auction on the?
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, we're very close on that.
Okay.
Because, you know, as that chart I showed you last week indicates, the first step in all that domino effect is we need to get that equipment out of there.
Yeah.
So Tommy and Mel are working on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion? No other discussion. All in favor, show sign of right hand. Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
That's all the budget amendments. Item number 6, motion to declare 103 North Slocum Street in Goldsboro, North Carolina as surplus property and authorize the city of Goldsboro to sell the property under its existing policy. Mr. Wood.
Mr. Chairman, if you look at page 80 in the packet, I've given you a memo on that. Behind that is the property. You'll see it's kind of an L-shaped property. It's not very deep. It only goes back about 58 feet for part of it, and then 133 for the other part, but that's only 50 feet wide. So it's an oddly shaped lot. It would have limitations because of the setbacks. But as I indicated, the county and city foreclosed on the property on August 25th of 14. The total cost, which was back taxes and demolition costs, was $27,458.25. So that's what we collectively have in it. The property is only valued for taxes at $2,680. So obviously, nobody's going to pay you $27,000 for this lot. So what we're recommending is that you go with the city's standard policy. Their policy is that they try to get 100% of the appraised value, which is the $2,680. And then they would use the negotiated offer, advertisement, and upset bid method. The reason we're bringing this to you is the lady who is next door, if you look at the map, she's expressed an interest in buying it. And of course, that would then add to her property. And given the size of the lot, someone could theoretically build on it, which is why the city's calling it a standard lot, but it would be kind of difficult to build on it. So the logical person to acquire it probably is this individual. And so what would happen under the negotiated offer, advertisement, upset bid is that, and what the city manager and I have agreed to is if you approve declaring it surplus and allowing them to use their policy, they'll set the rate. They'll go through the process, but what triggers the process is we would need a formal letter from her saying that she's offering to buy it at this price. And then we go to an upset price. But the question is, what kind of floor are we going to have? And the city typically would try to go with $2,680, but they have gone as low as 50% of the fair market value. I mean, not fair market value, but the assessed value. But as y'all can see, this property is not worth a great deal of money.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Darby.
The only question I have is the cost of demolition, from what I'm seeing here, was $23,000 to tear down a house?
Right.
Seems awful high. I mean, it seems awful high.
Yeah, we didn't do it, the city did it, so I don't know the answer to that.
Must have been asbestos.
We're in the wrong business.
Well, there may have been
If
asbestos.
there's
and there may have
asbestos
been-
in it, it's probably not.
I mean, that's just,
I did not discuss that part.
well, doesn't that seem high to you?
Well, it seems high, but you
On the
know,
surface it does.
what I looked
I
at
mean, I've
is,
had houses torn down before, they're
I
about
just
$3,000,
looked
$4,000.
at that we foreclosed on it and it's a done deal, so
Okay.
what I'm trying to do is
You're just trying to get it off your
get it-
plate.
I want to get it off our plate and get it on the tax rolls, although I will point out to you that if you look at page 83, we're not talking about a whole lot of taxes here, guys. So, but there is a cost to maintaining a vacant lot, so I think we need to get it off our books.
Pleasure of the board.
Motion to approve.
Mr. Bell, motion to proceed on
Proceed on with.
giving a piece of property away.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? No other discussion, all in favor, show sign of right hand. I think we just proved that we're not in the real estate business.
It's a good thing to do.
You did say you wanted to go into closed session?
Yes, sir, I
You
do.
want to do that now, or you want to go ahead and do our comments or whatever?
However y'all want to do it is fine with me.
Pleasure of the board. Closed session?
Close.
All right, let's go in closed session for just a few minutes.
Be to staff, to instruct your staff to negotiate on the price of property that you might purchase and consult with an attorney for it to preserve the attorney-client privilege.
We'll be back shortly.
And who made that
Yeah,
motion?
we had a motion. I so moved that we go into closed session based on what the attorney said.
The motion on the floor, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.